Arsenal have 5 transfers worth £75 million to conclude after £68 million Eberechi Eze move. It's been a hectic couple of weeks in the transfer market for Arsenal, with Mikel Arteta having wasted no time in shaping his squad for the new season. Kepa Arrizabalaga, Noni Madueke, Zubimendi, Cristhian Mosquera and most recently Viktor Gyokeres, have penned deals with the Emirates Stadium outfit. Remarkably though, Arsenal aren't said to be done there, with Eberechi Eze the latest name being linked to a transfer. The CR Crystal Palace ace hinted at a move away from Selhurst Park following the Eagles' FA Cup triumph over Manchester City last season, with Arsenal said to be leading the chase. However, even if Arsenal wrap up a deal for Eze before the start of the 2025-26 season, the Gunners will still have work to do in the transfer market. There are several players on the books at Arsenal who are likely to move on before the September 1 deadline. Express Sport have picked out 5 Arsenal players who could secure a move away from the club this summer. A product of the Arsenal Academy, Reiss Nelson has been with the club since he was 8 years old, but a permanent transfer looks likely. Fulham, where Nelson spent last season on loan, looks the most likely, with the Cottagers believed to be in advanced talks with the forward. If that deal goes through, he'll follow in the footsteps of fellow Hale Ender, Emile Smith-Rowe, who left Arsenal for Fulham last summer. Having arrived amid plenty of anticipation, Albert Sambi Lokonga's Arsenal career didn't go as expected, with the midfielder having spent the previous 2 campaigns out on loan. But with just 1 year left on his deal, this summer represents the final chance for Arsenal to bank a fee for the Belgian, given he'd be able to leave on a free transfer next year. Another player who brought plenty of excitement with them after joining, but Fabio Vieira's time as an Arsenal player hasn't exactly gone to plan. After 2 seasons spent predominantly on the bench, Vieira was shipped back to Porto on loan last year and could be subject to a move away from the Emirates again this time around. Alexander Zinchenko arrived at Arsenal during the same summer as Vieira and initially caught the eye at left back in Arteta's free-flowing setup. But as the North Londoners have been forced to turn to a more pragmatic approach, Zinchenko's minutes have been reduced significantly. Miles Lewis-Skelly and Riccardo Calafiori have taken up the mantle as Arsenal's preferred left-backs, meaning Zinchenko could look for a move elsewhere in search of regular first-team football. And finally, perhaps the most unlikely exit, but a player who has been touted to leave the capital club this summer. With Madueke already through the door and suggestions Eze could follow, perhaps Leandro Trossard is seen as the fall guy in Arsenal's squad. He's proved his worth since arriving from Brighton in 2023, but is this the end of the road for Trossard? Arsenal 3-2 Newcastle. Observations. Hey folks, I'm still here in Singapore. My flight is quite a bit later than I originally thought, so Lewis is off the hook today. I was at the game last night, a 3-2 win over Newcastle at the National Stadium, so like we did against AC Milan, here are some observations. Big Vic arrived. From what I gather, Viktor Gyokeres basically got off a flight from London to Singapore, got whisked to the stadium, said a few hellos behind the scenes, then pulled on his number 14 shirt and got announced to the crowd as the club's latest signing. As you'd imagine, the reception he received was fantastic. He walked onto the pitch, did some waves, walked off again, and that was that. I don't know you can ask much more from him in the circumstances, but obviously now he's with the squad for the final leg of the tour. They head to Hong Kong tomorrow, and it's not impossible that he could make an actual appearance against SP*RS, but I'm sure he'll be properly assessed in terms of his fitness and readiness to do that. Everyone's understandably excited about the new guy, and we all hope he'll be a huge success, but maybe his arrival puts a bit of pressure on Kai Havertz. That doesn't have to be a bad thing, and in the first half yesterday he provided the assist for Mikel Merino's smartly taken equalizer, and it was his cross from the left that led to the own goal to make it 2-1. Ideally you want both Havertz and Gyokeres to play a big part this season. We've learned the hard way asking too much of our players leads to injuries, and I don't think the German is the kind of guy who will just sulk or let his head drop because there's another player who is a viable option for his position. Newcastle are physical afterwards. Mikel Arteta said games like this are not friendlies, calling them a test instead. Which I get. This game was played at a higher pace than the one against AC Milan, and I think facing Premier League opposition demands more from you for various reasons. However, I will say I questioned the wisdom of playing a team who like to leave a bit in too many challenges. You could argue it's part of our preparation. It won't be any different when we face them in the Premier League, but when you see Joelinton come on and slap a 15-year-old in the face, having just done the same thing to Mourinho a few seconds earlier, it can get a bit frustrating. Particularly after injuries derailed our last season. Thankfully, none of the challenges dealt any serious damage, but it wasn't for the lack of trying from one or two of the Newcastle players. As a small aside, Elliot and I walked past their assistant manager Jason Tindall in Singapore yesterday as we went to go for lunch. He looks like a twat up close too. Riccardo Calafiori. I enjoyed his first 45 minutes, and it's interesting that Mikel Arteta has started him in both games out here. He obviously wants to give him central defensive minutes as there's still some doubt as to when exactly Gabriel will be 100% fit. Early in the second half though, he went down with nobody around him, and had to come off. He went straight down the tunnel, not looking too happy. Afterwards, Arteta described it as a tweak, but of what we don't know. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but perhaps more than anyone else, the Italian really needed an injury-free preseason to provide some reassurance, for himself and for us as fans. After last season it's hard not to worry. There's a very good player there, but concerns about his availability will continue if he's sidelined again. Max Daumann, again. Just like against AC Milan, he came on and impressed. This was even more striking though, doing it against Premier League opposition rather than a Serie A side who basically ambled their way through the previous game. He had 2 shots which the keeper did well to save, and the burst and run which won the penalty, desperately pushed down by Joelinton, was sensational. The combination of skill and pace was breathtaking. Asked about him afterwards, Arteta said, "It is special. Obviously what he's done today against this team in the time that he had on the pitch is something certainly not common to witness for a 15-year-old. As you might imagine, Arsenal are keen to keep the hype to a minimum because of his age. But if you're going to play him in a high-profile preseason friendly and he does what he did last night, people are going to talk. Fans, the press, podcasters, everyone. I get the need to keep a lid on it because of his age. He can't even sign professional terms until he turns 17, but that's not until the end of 2026. But we're seeing something a bit special here and I think it's okay to say that out loud. Singapore. Just some final thoughts on my own stay here, rather than the match last night. A big thank you to everyone I met for their welcome and hospitality. It's always amazing to connect with fans from all over the world, and there were so many of them here this week. I've had such a great time, and I can't wait to come back here again. On top of everything else, the food is just so good. Right, I'll leave it there. Andrew Allen will be on blog duty tomorrow, and hopefully, if we can line things up in terms of timing, tiredness, jet lag, we'll have a podcast for you too. For now, have a good one. The new Rosicky, Arsenal look set to sign £60 million. Magician, after Gyokeres this summer has been an exciting one for Arsenal fans to watch. Gone are the days of Adu dragging things out and missing out on key targets. Andrea Berta has come in and been aggressive in the window. The Gunners have only played 2 preseason games but have already signed 6 players. That being said, the saga that revolved around new centre forward, Viktor Gyokeres, was certainly a tiring one. That wasn't Berta's fault, however. Arsenal had predominantly earmarked 2 strikers this window, Gyokeres and Benjamin Sesko. However, despite approval from most at Arsenal, Sesko's agent priced him out of a move and the Swede was pursued instead. The Gunners are no doubt happy with their business. This is a player who scored 54 goals in 52 games last season. Even half of that tally in 2025-26, and this will have been a successful acquisition. But, what's next? Well, Berta is already hard at work. What's next for Arsenal after Gyokeres? It's likely that for a short while, Arsenal will focus on moving players out of the club. The arrival of Gyokeres took their spending to over £200 million this summer, so sales may well be necessary. Fulham are said to be in talks to sign Reiss Nelson, but there's also interest from Crystal Palace, and that's where Arsenal's next deal could take them. It's no secret that the North Londoners are keen on signing Eberechi Eze this summer, and according to journalist Ben Jacobs, they are now in talks with Palace over a move. Up to this point, there had only been an agreement between Eze and Arsenal on personal terms. There have been plenty of developments over the weekend, however, with Football Transfers noting that Mikel Arteta's side have agreed to pay an initial £30 million for the England international, and talks are now focused around the payment structure of the remaining £38 million of his release clause. The Independent's Miguel Delaney reports that sources close to the player believe that he will become an Arsenal player in the next few weeks, confident that a deal will get done. The Emirates Stadium outfit are said to be Eze's top choice this summer, but Berta and company hope to be able to agree a fee of around £60 million for his services. Why Eze could be Arsenal's new Tomas Rosicky? During the days of Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, the team was filled with technical geniuses. Not forgetting the likes of Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry, the later years of the Frenchman's tenure saw players like Jack Wilshere, Santi Cazorla, Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez come to the fore. There were others too. Think André Arshavin, the scorer of 4 goals at Anfield, Alexander Haleb, and a player cut from a similar cloth, Tomas Rosicky. Signed from Borussia Dortmund for a fee of just £6.8 million, he arrived as one of the most exciting young attacking midfielders on the continent. The Czech Republic international had a fierce ball strike on him, something we saw when he cracked home his first goal, but he also possessed the ability to dazzle defenders, dribbling past them with ease and explosively driving forward. As Wenger once said, he always makes things happen, not with individual dribbling but with individual acceleration in his passing. I think when he arrived here he was less of a tactical player and more the Mozart from Prague. He was purely a creative, offensive player. Injuries really destroyed Rosicky's career in London, ultimately meaning his numbers didn't look particularly impressive, scoring 28 goals and supplying 23 assists. Yet, his qualities are still remembered fondly by supporters of a certain generation. Take injuries out of the equation, and Eze has been built in a similar lab. As the Telegraph's Sam Dean says, the Palace sensation is a magician, and the exact sort of player Arsenal have been missing. It's hard to dispute that claim. Like Rosicky, he's creative, he's a goalscorer, and like Wenger noted, he's a bit of a Mozart on the ball. Eze's first game of preseason showcased exactly that, nearly scoring a remarkable solo goal. A little like Rosicky, he bursts forward in possession of the ball. What happened next was audacious, nearly chipping the goalkeeper. £68 million please, Berta, that's all it'll take to bring this creative genius to the Emirates Stadium this summer. Arsenal have plenty of players who put fun into football. Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard are chief among them. Yet, what Arteta has done since arriving at Arsenal is build a team of giants. Mikel Merino suggested that, we, Arsenal, look like a basketball team, when he first moved to the Premier League, and within that, some of the technical aesthetics have been lost. Eze, however, would bring that back to Arsenal. He was the scorer of 14 goals and the creator of 11 assists in 2024-25. That wasn't a one-off either. He's hit double figures throughout the last 3 campaigns and is only getting better. Last season was his finest in the red and blue stripes of Palace to date. He's a Premier League proven star and, like Declan Rice, would surely settle into things at the club with ease.